Unscripted.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of PD and PDubs Unscripted here on this nice icy day. PDubs, good to be with you.
Hey, great to be in the studio again and safe and sound away from the treachery of the roads and sidewalks.
Yeah, it was a little treacherous this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I went out to my car and it was a sheet of ice on our driveway and I was waiting for my van to just slide down like a sled, but it made it. Thankfully,
good traction.
Good traction. As I was telling you earlier, you know, both of our vehicles have new tires all around within the last, I'll say, 6 months. So feeling thankful for that.
Right, get that good tread on there. And
Yeah,
because I know this morning when I was doing a couple things outside real quick, I stepped and I was like, ooh, that's a little slick. And I almost felt like I was going to, it was that quick little like, ooh, if I wasn't careful, I would have been down for the count.
Yeah, for sure. It happens fast. And, well, even yesterday in the house, walking around and, you know, without any shoes on, and I got my socks on, and I'm going down the steps, and all of a sudden my one foot goes over the one step, and, like, I caught myself, thankfully, but I've tripped down those steps before, and, man, the one time I slipped down that, I probably was the same step. I went out with my foot and put a hole in the wall.
Oops.
But this time I didn't fall. So
well, that's good. Yeah, and that's almost the hard part too sometimes this time of year when you walk in to like different flooring, if your shoes are wet, boom, you go down like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, we got ceramic tile in our foyer. So yeah, that kind of happens. Like you get wetness coming in and ceramic tile is rough.
Right.
So thankfully we got area rugs and mats and things like that. So
and I have the hardwood, and so Madison can't run on that one too well.
No. Well, Bailey even took a spill coming down those very steps at the base of the ceramic tile the other day, and she just splatted, and I was right there, and I picked her up and kind of held her, checked her she's okay, and then she was fine. But I think it surprised her more than anything.
Threw her off. That kind of almost like watching football when somebody gets their wind knocked out of them, where you see them just laying there like, oh, that looks like a serious injury.
Yeah.
But it's just the wind being knocked out of them.
Yeah, so I'm glad it wasn't anything worse. But, boy, she made a thump, that's for sure.
Well, she's not a little dog.
No, she's not. She's just under 80 pounds.
She's big, because I think Madison was like 70, 75 pounds last time at the vet.
Yeah. Now, Barkley, he's a tanko. He's like 89 pounds.
Solid.
And he's got the winter 5 pounds already on him. I got to get him out more. I don't know.
Yeah, I need to get Madison. But I was like, it's too cold.
I know.
Like, I was so shocked last week when we were really cold. I let her out at like 10:30 at night, and there's a guy walking his dog at 10:30 at night. I was like, what are you doing? That's not fair to that dog.
I know.
For their little paws, and if there's any salt out there.
Mm-hmm. I know. I tried to go out into the woods with my dog on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember the day. Maybe it was Sunday. Yeah. And, the snow depth was a lot to negotiate, and we didn't make it very far. And so I turned around and... then we walked around the parking lot, which was, better. It's a big parking lot, so.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with Madison. It feels like the past week, every day, 3:30 a.m., she's like, let's go outside. I hear her whining. Or the other night, I came home and let her out once I get home. I get situated in bed, like 5 minutes later, and then she's crying. She wants to go back out again. I was like, really? Couldn't you do what you needed to when you're out there? And not once I get all situated in bed.
Yeah.
Now I got to get up. Go take you out.
Yeah. I think sometimes they condition us, with those things. But, the thing is, like, if you say, I'm not getting up, go back to sleep, then you wake up and, they make a mess.
Right. And that's what I'm afraid.
You want to avoid that.
And I don't want to, have her be physically ill because she does need to go out and it's an emergency. But, I just hear the little whimper barely at, 3:30 in the morning. I'm just like, do I really hear it? Let's give it a little bit. Oh, I heard it again. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to get up.
Yeah, it's like the dog owner games, just.
Like, do I play chicken?
I know, yeah. Who's going to win out on this?
I was like, just come back in bed, dog.
Yeah. Well, such is the life of a dog owner and even a pastor who's a dog owner.
Right, and that's both of us are pastors and dog owners last time I checked. So, No, I was thinking we could talk a little bit about the life of a pastor because, we just work, that 1 hour a week?
That's it. Yeah, for church.
Right. And so, and it's maybe I was thinking about because once in a while it comes up with the kids, like, especially like when I'm on like spring break or summer break, and they're like, what are you doing at the church or at the school? Or like, what do you do during the week when there's no school?
Right.
And I'm like, don't worry, time fills itself.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, like we were kicking around is like any given day, it could be absolutely different than the previous day.
Right. I think that's one of the aspects I do like, that idea that not every day am I just sitting kind of in the office 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
That there is that variety. I don't know about you, but that's something I do enjoy about it.
Yeah, I do too. Sometimes it's tough to manage, because like you walk in and you think, just like everyone else, I've got things in mind that I want to accomplish. And then when you come into the office, a situation may arise that, requires your attention either in the building or for a member or things like that. How often have we come in and soon to find that someone passed away? And so that sets things in motion, and phone calls or someone had an accident and they're in the hospital. Those kinds of pastoral care things make your day change a little bit,
Right. So it's good and bad, because sometimes obviously when somebody passes away, it's sad because that loss that that family's going through, but it also is like an honor to be able to serve them in that time of need.
Right.
But it does really change how the day goes.
Yeah. Or even just if, the old, someone pops in your door, hey, do you have a minute or two?
Right.
And it could be any given topic, but the person needs to just talk. I was walking, I went into the church sanctuary for something, and then I was coming back and I bumped into someone, and they were talking to me about, medications that they're on, and, how they're going through these things. And I'm like, well, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you what to do,
Right.
but, so, you literally just be a good listener and like, okay, I hear what you're saying, and, you just try and listen and guide and direct, and,
And I think that's part of it, is because I feel both of us kind of have that open door policy where it's like keeping the door open and kind of invites some of those.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I need to get this done, but I'm like, the priority is the person
Right.
in front of you. And so is that conversation.
And I think that's part of being a pastor, is to be mindful of, the Lord bringing people to you in any given moment, with any given need. And just to kind of step back, because we're just like anybody else when we're heads down trying to knock something out task-wise, be it emails, prep for Bible study, or sermon prep, or confirmation class prep, or whatever. You kind of got to be willing to just stop right there and put that off to the side for a little bit.
Right. And I think one of the things I always like struggle sometimes is like, okay, finish up something. It's like, oh, we got another meeting in like 5 minutes. And it's like, I don't really want to start. And I'm sure it's in any job. It's like, well, I don't really want to start the next task.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to get started and boom, I got to stop, and whatever like momentum I had thinking wise will be out the door.
Right. And I think it's those, I'll call them encounters, not interruptions. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where you're kind of trying to track on things that is challenging to me sometimes, because, I'll be, moving on something. Then there's someone requires my attention.
Me.
So, and then
I knock on your door,
and then another person, and then I sit back and I go, now what was I doing? And then like if your day goes with those kinds of scenarios, then you look and you go like, wow, the day just flew by. What did I accomplish?
right?
And
I'm sure it's not just in the life of a pastor.
No.
Any job has it where you're like, where did my day go?
Where did it go? Yeah, I it's kind of a joke. Like sometimes I'll be like, well, I'm going to lunch and it's 2:00 or
3.
whatever. And then I go to lunch and I think, well, I guess I won't be having dinner today or whatever, but like, or I'll be getting hungry at like 8:45, which is unhealthy.
Right. And I mean, I think that was especially during like COVID, like it felt like because of all the schedule and like commitments with the school stuff, like wasn't eating lunch till like 2-3 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now when it's time for dinner at like 5 or 6, I'm like, I'm not really hungry.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I'm not going to feel like cooking anything. But I'm like, if I don't eat anything, I'm going to be starving when I wake up in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
And like you said, it's not the greatest idea to be eating at 8, 9 o'clock at night. But yeah, so that kind of adjusted that.
I know, like after Gathering Place last night, which ends at 7:30, I turned to Gwen and said, "Hey, you want some Lou Malnati's?" Because I had a gift card. And she goes, "Sure, that would be awesome." And then I'm like, "Well, it'll be done by 8:15." She goes, "Oh, that's not the healthiest thing, I guess, is it?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't think so."
Did you do the deep dish or the tavern style?
Deep dish?
Okay, if you did tavern, it might have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I did the Chicago classic,
That the one with like the whole sausage patty on underneath.
Oh yeah, double mozzarella.
Where's the
butter
close,
crisp
where's
crust?
the closest one to you?
Carrie.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, because after Gathering Place, I was like, well, I got some leftover pizza I can throw in the
There you go.
microwave.
Well, that's what I figured. I'm like, well, it's just her and I now. So like when we buy a pizza, it's like, well, I'll just order one and we'll have leftovers. I mean, leftover Lou's is awesome, but whatever.
Yeah. But I can't say mine was leftover Lou's.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those any given day in the life of a pastor can be, varied in many ways, and I think that's what we have to be ready for, is that flexibility, but yet still manage our time.
Right.
You want to be available for people, but then there's things you have to accomplish so that you can, feed your people with the word and things like that.
Right, because I feel that's always one that gets pushed to like later in the week than what I want would be like sermon prep.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, I'm thinking about it throughout the week and a half maybe prior. And then it's like, oh, it's Thursday. Like I know I've joked with you sometimes. I'm like, I actually wrote my sermon today in the office.
I know.
I didn't think that was possible.
I've gotten to the point where I can't even get my mind around thinking of a sermon, like sitting down in the office anymore. It's like I have to go away either at my house, or I just have to go to another site or go for a walk if the weather is good, just to kind of process. But I remember in seminary, they're like, the process of creating a sermon begins on Monday, where you flesh out your outline and
right.
And then, you may begin to do your first draft, and then you go over it each day. And I'm thinking, well, that's a nice theoretical way to go about it. And it's a great practice if one were disciplined enough. And believe me, I know I'm not. But I usually find myself at the end of the week kind of like, okay, what am I going to do?
Right. Because do you actually ever make an outline?
No. Not on paper. I don't.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes
I probably should.
Sometimes I do. I kind of like, especially that's like one of those. I'm like, okay, I know I'm not gonna have time to write it, but I'm kind of thinking it out right now. I'm like, well, at least write down kind of intro, kind of a couple thoughts, next paragraph.
That's good.
And just kind of write out a few of the points, so that way, okay, now I can just go fill that in.
That's probably why your sermons are more crisp than mine.
Oh, yours are very crisp, my friend.
But I've tried a variety of ways, like different methodologies over however many years I've been doing this. And I've done the outline thing. I've done, write a draft and do all that. I've done thought blocks and connect them visually on a paper. I've done PowerPoints. I would say that when I elect to do a PowerPoint in my sermon, that helps me, and I equate that to outline. But when I don't, I guess in my head, I have ideas of where I want to go, and then it's usually just trying to come up with something to get me going,
right.
Something to transition through an illustration, and then wrap the gospel around it. And
right, that's always sometimes I'm like, how can I introduce this? And you don't want to fall into the trap of doing the same like order every single time.
Yeah.
Because then it just becomes monotonous. So you want to change up, vary the style and way. And I think something that I've learned over the years is like when I used to go over it a lot more, like practicing speaking out loud, I'm like, I think it was more structured. It felt more like rigid and not as conversational.
Yeah.
And not allowing that ability to like kind of ad lib a little bit into there, because it was like, oh, if I change how I word here, how I practiced, I'm not going to think of the word order the same way, so it's going to throw me off. Because, like this past weekend, including Waymaker with our 10:30 with our kids singing that, that wasn't a part of any of my manuscript, but it was one of that idea. I was like, oh, that would be a good tie-in. But I think earlier in my ministry, I would have been like, I don't know if I can add this in here because it's going to
I totally get what you're saying.
Throw off my, it's kind of like, and I think we've joked about this, when, say the wine runs out for communion and you got to do the words of institution over it. Yeah. I'm always thinking how does this start? How's this go again? I say it every week just about.
Yeah, but you're not standing behind the altar where you normally say
and you're not doing it in the same rhythm cadence of going through the first part of it. So sometimes I'm in my head, I'm doing the first part of it. And I'm like, okay, now I can do the.
Yeah. And of course, being a pastor, I think, you can see this in business too. And what I mean by that, you're talking to different, I'll call them types of people or audiences. You could be talking to the whole congregation, or you could be talking to a subset, like our 50s plus.
Right.
Or you could be talking to your youth.
Right.
You could be talking to leadership. You could be talking to staff. You could be talking to congregational member, school, family. So there's all different kind of relationships that you could be interacting with on any given part of the day.
Right. And even that, the context of who you're talking to, I think back to when I was in Salem, there'd be some Wednesdays because we had a Lutheran high school in Centralia, which was the town over. And so every once in a while I would lead chapel there in the mornings. And then once a month, our church, we'd rotate between my senior pastor and me, who would preach at the nursing home. And so I was some days I'd be preaching in the high school in the morning and the senior nursing home in the afternoon. It's the same sermon wouldn't fly over if I'm talking about how to do things or be a Christian on social media. I don't think the nursing home people would really...
They wouldn't get it.
So it's okay, I got to adjust this message based on the target audience.
Yeah, and I kind of saw you doing that. It was pretty apparent to me. I always hear every rendition of your message, just as you do for me. And this week there were a lot of different illustrations based upon who your audience was over one service over another, and I think those are good things to think about, and as you try and consider who your audience is at any given moment.
Right. Yeah, especially for the 10:30, bringing in the praying in church, and since we're remembering our school kids, and that idea of them praying in school, not in church, is why it was meant.
Yeah.
But yeah, even though most of them were at SME, but I'm still sure a lot of people can relate to that of when somebody asks me to pray, I don't always feel the most comfortable.
Yeah, right.
And you're always well, somebody else can do it, right?
Exactly. But yeah, I think variety is a fun thing to have, and there are times where, sometimes you wish it wasn't so active, you feel oh, now I've pushed this off and now I really got to get to it, and I hope that I don't have something else pop up, and but then sometimes it does, and it
all gets done.
It all gets done by the glory of God, and there's been nights where I'm going into the confirmation students and I think, oh man, I got to look at the stuff here, and it's half hour before the time to teach, and it's okay, I just got to know where I'm at and what the subject is, and we can go with it, and thankfully you've got the outline created, and it's a launching pad for which way you want to go with it, and
at least gives you an idea of the general theme.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you resources of where to look up and on the topic and all that. So it's those kinds of things that are good, and then like you say, we're just kind of talking around on campus, and what are times when we go to visit people at hospital, rehab, or in their home. That's a whole different kind of interaction,
right? And I say that's probably one of my favorite things is those interactions with people visit. Probably more in their homes. Hospital's good to visit people, but it's always wish it was a better circumstance in which I'm seeing you. Mm-hmm. Especially if I haven't seen that person for a while. It's rather not see you in the hospital, but it's good to see you.
Yeah.
And just hearing people's stories. I always think of one person that passed away shortly after I came, or maybe within a year, was like Eb Fuhr. It would have been interesting to hear his journey with all coming over from Germany and all of that stuff in World War II with him here in the States.
Yeah, he was a remarkable individual, and I got blessed to hear his story because he shared it with 50s Plus, I think. It was before you came, obviously, and I was like, I had no idea that he went through all that, or I had no idea that kind of thing existed in our country.
Right, and I read like the book that he was in and interviewed for, and I'm like, wow, what a life.
Yeah, no kidding. And you just think of your own life, and you think, whew, mine is like small potatoes.
Even was it Art Just, his, like, it's going through Germany during World War II.
Right.
But all those stories you get to hear of people, and you just didn't realize their background and what they've gone through in their life.
Because most times people they're very humble and they don't want to talk about those things. And but boy, when they do, it's powerful. And so you get to hear some of that when you visit with them, and it is a joy to visit with people. And you're kind of casting aside all of the other duties or tasks, and it's kind of refreshing because you're stepping away from the routine-ish, and you feel like I'm being a pastor today. I don't know if you ever had those moments where you're like, today I really felt like a pastor.
Right. Not when you get emails like, do you not feel like a pastor like I got last week?
Yeah, no kidding.
But those visits, and like, I don't know, sometimes, and they go really quick, it feels at times. Some are like, it's like, I've been here this long. I know. I remember it when I was in Salem, I was visiting this one lady because it was a regular visit. I'd be there like 2 hours, and I'm like, well, I need to get going because, I got to get dinner going. I got to meet. Oh, you sure you really need to get going? It's like, I've been here 2 hours. I'm like, I kind of need to get home.
I kind of do. I got a dog.
Well, I don't think I had Madison at that point, but maybe I did towards the end. But it was like one of those, like, I'm glad you enjoy spending that time, but it's just like, where did the time go at times? Yeah.
And that is a blessing when people are so happy to see you, and that's really what they're saying. Like, can't you stay longer? This has been fabulous. And that really makes that fills your cup, right? And the other things that I enjoy are like premarital counseling sessions, and I just enjoy getting to know the couple and help them dialogue with one another over things and establish or reestablish things in their relationship. So those are good, and then. Strangely, for funeral preparation, when you meet with a family, as you prepare, I love just hearing about the person, kind of like what we were saying with Eb and Arthur, and just seeing the family
open up
and see how it helps them to talk about their loved one, and it's almost therapeutic in a way. But, you feel like, golly, I've just been invited into a pretty amazing space with these people. Right.
Yeah, that they want to share, and that they're comfortable enough to share in this great time of tragedy of losing a loved one, where you can just be there to encourage them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I even think to the grander scale, like I think of like the trips, whether it's a mission trip, youth gathering.
Yeah.
Those are some of the highlights to me in my ministry over the years, because I think what it is it really bonds people together when you go on those trips.
Yes.
Where, especially with the youth, it's like they get to see you maybe in a different light as the pastor, that, you are kind of a regular person.
Yeah.
And like just have those fun opportunities to just goof around, maybe play a game. Like when I used to do the PE classes with the kids when they picked me to be on their team, or they maybe just picked it so they could pick what game in PE class.
Yeah,
but it's still that more like relaxed setting to get to know the pastor, and I think that's something I value.
Yeah. Those mission trips, those kinds of things. You're right. There's a bond that occurs, and from the drive to get to the place to staying overnight at a place together, and having dinner with each other, having breakfast with each other, going to the work site, all of that, to what you're doing at the volunteering for. And
And I think, and then like everyone, I feel like there's some story or something that comes,
Oh, yeah.
some memory that you can think, when I look back to that, like, as in my office, I got all the pictures of all the trips around my ceiling. It's like I can look to them like, okay, I remember that from that trip, or that's what stood out to me, or that connection that was formed.
Yeah, it's like God provides these very unique opportunities out in the field, we'll call it, whatever way you want to say it, but like to really enter into someone's life and to help their faith grow in a tangible way. That's really super great. And it's like you feel like you're hitting your sweet spot sometimes.
And that's what I always tell the kids when I share kind of my faith statement with them as they prep for their faith statement in 8th grade confirmation. Is like, that's why I love those trips. But that moment when it seems like it clicks, when like you guys realize or somebody realizes this is what it's all about. This is why God is important. I don't know. That to me is like one of the best feelings there is. Like when you see that light bulb go on in that person's life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so cool. And that happens in a youth and even in an adult,
right.
So, but you're right. The stories that come out of those things. I was just sharing a story with our Bible study the other week about one of our trips, and one of our members named Don, he was sitting in the heat with a towel that was soaking wet in the scorching sun, removing nails out of 2x4s, and he's like, Pastor, I don't know that I came all the way down here to southern Indiana to pluck out, hundreds of nails out of a 2x4, but if that's what I got to do, I'll do it, And so just, those memories, I'll never forget that. And I'm like, Don, there's a tree. Go sit under the tree. Nope. I'm sitting here.
Well, I always think of the one we went to up in Minnesota at the Lutheran camp, like 2 hours north of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Luther Island, where it was like husband, wife, their 2 daughters, couple other the daughters' friends. Like so, it was like 5 girls, myself, the parents, and then one of our members who used to go to this place in the 70s that just wanted to see what it was like. I remember in the middle of the week, one of the parents like, our one daughter wants to go to every state. We are like 90 minutes away from North Dakota. Can we go to North Dakota tonight?
Okay.
And it was like, well, let's ask the camp. We got to kind of abide by their rules. And they're like, that's fine. So all of us got in the vehicle and drove to Fargo, North Dakota.
Wow.
And it's like, what is there to do in Fargo, North Dakota? So we went to dinner. We went to dinner. Went to like a ice cream place or cookie place. And then we went to the visitor center in Fargo, North Dakota, which they have the wood chipper from the movie Fargo.
Okay.
And there's a picture of like the one girl putting her dad's head in the wood chipper, like in the movie. But then they had like the Walk of Fame where they had like handprints of like famous people in the concrete, like I think Neil Diamond, Metallica. And it was just kind of like, I did not know this existed here in Fargo, North Dakota.
I had no idea either.
So now I can say I've been to North Dakota and mark that off my list of states I've been to.
Yeah.
But I never thought when we were planning that trip, we'd be making a 90-minute drive into Fargo, North Dakota.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, those are fun things. That's pretty funny. That's good. I was thinking of like one trip that we were in Fort Wayne. So this is before I was a pastor. I was always helping the youth and everything, and so we did a trip to Minnesota. And as we're driving, we had two big vans, and I said, well, we should stop off at my brother and sister-in-law's place where our family goes all the time. And so we did. And we had like 20 kids at that place. And all of a sudden somebody goes, hey, can you go swimming in that lake or pond that you guys have? Like, well, you can go, but nobody ever goes there because it's like seaweedy and mucky bottom. And well, one kid goes in, she's from the country. She's like, oh, this is great. And then another kid, and the next thing I know, like almost everybody's in the water. And like, I've been going to this place for years. I've never even wanted to go in there.
Or another one, I think it was when we were in Boston, which there's a lot of stories from the Boston trip. But I remember like walking to Starbucks with some of the kids. And one was like, I think I left like my GoPro or whatever in the car. And we happened to run into the group of people that were in the car where she left the GoPro or whatever it was. And next thing you know, as they drive away, the person throws like the bag with that out of the car to the person.
Oh, no.
It didn't break, but it was just like,
What are you doing?
Because I think they were stopped initially, and then they started to pull off, and it was just like, oh man.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the random stuff like that you remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Crazy stuff. But those are cool memories, and they're lasting, and you feel like, as a pastor, like, okay, this is great. This is a big reason why I became a pastor,
right?
To kind of walk along people in life situations, or get them out of their comfort zone, away from their normal routine, and just watch God work in them is pretty cool.
Right. I think just the building of the relationships, because to me, that's essential part of pastors, building those relationships with the people of the congregation. And I go back to what President Dale Meyer said at our graduation or call day, one of those final services, when he was just like, love your people.
Yeah.
That's like, guys, that's the most important thing. Love your people.
Yeah. And you talk about relationships. We get to walk with people in various cycles of their lives, from marriages we talked about, to baptisms, and depending on how many children they have, you could be involved in all of those. Death in the family, be involved in that.
Confirmation.
Well,
even because you've done a baptism for a 7th generation member of our congregation, and think about that history of that family being here throughout all those generations.
Right. To be a part of their story, and which is so ingrained into our history, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, or a couple weeks ago, we had 2 cousins get baptized at the same time, and so I view those things as really special. And
or you've had child and parent.
Yep.
We've had some of those.
Yeah. So those are kind of the really cool things. Like, you just walk away and say, "Wow, that's pretty cool to be involved in their lives like that."
It's such a milestone moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they seem very appreciative of our involvement and all of that. So, but yeah, so the little bit of a window into our lives, here and there, and yet, we are still people who go home and have outside interests, and as everybody knows, you and I love sports. We love dogs.
We love sports.
Yeah. I don't do much outside of here. I just go home and veg out.
Read the Book of Concord.
Yeah. Yes. I wish I could do more of that.
It is a wonderful book.
It is a wonderful book indeed.
But yeah, so that's just like Pastor said, PDubs said, just a little bit of a glimpse into our life and some of the things that we really enjoy about our ministry and life as a pastor. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and see you next time.